she talks about how much he loves her. Nothing about her love for him. Imagine being so hated by the magazine editor that wanted to turn you into a star that in their cover feature, they actually screw you over in such dramatic fashion that you may end up being stripped of your royal title. That is just what's happened overnight with this extraordinary cover feature on Harpers Bazaar with Meghan Markle as they claim that she's meeting her moment. But indeed, the reality of this feature is that Ms. Markle, even when she's acting as a private citizen in New York City, hawking her wares in order to fund her over-the-top lifestyle, even in a private apartment, she is introduced by the staff as the Duchess of Sussex. Yes, that's right. This is actually a completely mortifying feature. We're going to go through it all today. And of course, it is timed just as her public display of affection with Prince Harry in a cringeworthy Netflix trailer, which, let's be honest, is going to mark the final chapter of With Love, Meghan. It is timed to overshadow, once again, the real royals, because Prince William and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, showed what it was all about as they put duty first at the Royal Variety performance in London last night. And of course, we will get to that as well. But this is all part of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's ongoing war with the British royal family. And to pretend that isn't happening anymore is the height of naivety. And I could not be happier to be doing it today with Tom Sykes. He is the European editor-at-large at the Daily Beast, but more importantly, in the context of this show, you will know I talk about him often as the man behind the brilliant Royalist Substack, which is breaking scoop after scoop after scoop on the British royal family, and most importantly, to me, is no longer working in lockstep with the corruption of the royal rota. So, Tom, I mean, I said to you earlier, the royal story gods were looking down on us today, but we've got to kick off with this Harper's Bazaar feature because, Tom, a lot of people are saying, yeah, on the surface, the magazine might be trying to make Meghan look good, but as soon as you peel behind what's going on in this feature, indeed, she's made to look like a complete and utter moron, still using her royal title in the most extraordinary manner.
Yeah, hi Dan. Thanks so much for having me today. It came out late last night, our UK time, and the moment I read it, this line jumped out at me. So shall I just read it so people know exactly what we're talking about?
Please.
Okay. So the writer is called Caitlin Greenidge, and she does one interview with her first at a fancy hotel in Beverly Hills, where actually, when I read it again this morning, I noted she mentions that the PR is present, which is, as you know, as a journalist, an incredibly annoying and patronizing thing as a journalist to have the PR present. Then she says, this is the journalist writing, this is Greenidge writing, "We're in a grand brownstone on the Upper East Side that belongs to one of Meghan's friends, who I believe is Misha No, but when I enter, the house manager announces, Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, even though we appear to be the only two people in the house." I mean, Dan, how I covered this last night, I said that, you know, I love a trumpeter to announce my presence when I go into the kitchen as much as any other guy. I'm sure you have a page who, you know, wherever you go, announces that Sir Dan Wootton is on his way. But it is an extraordinary anecdote. And as you say, tucked into what on the surface appears to be a very warm and sympathetic and frankly sycophantic article in the way that, you know, often these American magazine articles are, because it's really all about getting the photos. I just think it's, I mean, yeah, it's an extraordinary bit of unfiltered snark, I think, from the journalists, is the official American term for this.
Because, Tom, you had a very interesting take on this in the Royalist, because, of course, your connections to, British aristocratic circles run deep. And you say, indeed, anyone who actually knows how titles work realise that the moment you're on American soil, they're completely meaningless.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, right? It's an American citizen on American soil. It's embarrassing. It's just really uncool, I think, to be using your title. You just look like sort of try hard. You just look ridiculous, It's like Winston Churchill is a good example of this. He, on his American tour in 1929, wrote back to Clemmy saying, "Titles count for nothing with Americans." He observed that Americans care little for the trappings of aristocracy and introduced himself everywhere as Mr. Churchill. I'm glad to say that's the end of my impressions.
No, I'm loving it, Tom. A man of many talents.
And I think what's always fun to look at in these contexts is how these things are sometimes approached fictionally, where people can have a bit more latitude. And of course, P.G. Wodehouse, one of the great chroniclers of the sort of transatlantic snobism, if you were, if you will, your guide to interwar transatlantic, pre-war interatlantic snobbery, P.G. Wodehouse. He has this wonderful character who I'm sure everybody watching this will know, Lord Emsworth, who sort of pooters around his estate up in the north of England somewhere, looking after his pigs, and is always being mistaken for the gardener by visitors to the house, because he wears a battered old jacket. And of course, at home, he's called Lord Emsworth, and everyone refers to him as Lord Emsworth. When he goes to America, he becomes Mr. Threepwood, is his alias. And Bertie Wooster always joking about how Americans, it's no use waving a title at an American because they don't understand. And actually, Dan, to be totally honest, people that I know with titles do not use them in the United Kingdom either, because it's kind of like, I mean, maybe the first time you meet somebody, they might say, this is my father, Lord so-and-so, or what have you. But very swiftly, the person will say, "Oh, for goodness sake, just call me." Do you know what I mean? Because it is old-fashioned, and people, of course, do respect the tradition and all of that. And lots of people do like for it to be acknowledged once, perhaps, But the idea that, and also, I mean, it's just so bonkers, isn't it? Because it's like you announce people's names in kind of costume dramas, like about what the world used to be like when they're arriving at a ball, not when someone else is arriving at your home. Sort of, it's so
100%.
crazy.
By the way, a very modern house, if it is Misha Nunu's house, with a house manager. The whole thing is completely nuts. But there's a very serious side to this, Tom. And it plays into something that you have been reporting for a long time. And you wrote on this last night. I also think this behaviour makes clear why William, as the Royalist was the first to report, is now so determined to strip the titles from Meghan and Harry in the fullness of time. If I am right, it is a spectacularly bad strategic move for Meghan to keep deploying these titles in blatantly commercial settings like this Harpers Bazaar feature. When the titles are removed, and they will be, especially if this kind of exploitation of them continues, it will be an even bigger story because Meghan has made such an enormous point of using them. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, absolutely, I have backed up your reporting on this. The titles are going to go. William simply hopes his father is going to have reason to do it before his death. That is looking increasingly unlikely. But I mean, I think we can all concede that there will be a time when Meghan will be Meghan Mountbatten Windsor or Meghan Markle, whichever she chooses, like it or not. So that's why this is so grim. Remember, we also saw it last year when she was sending a private gift and she was even using her HRH title, which is something that she had promised the late Queen Elizabeth II she wouldn't do. A very quick but personal message from me to you to let you know that the best way you can support Dan Wootton Outspoken is to subscribe to my Substack at www.outspoken.live. Substack is a free speech platform that protects me from big tech cancellation and lawfare. Paid annual or monthly subscribers get an extra hour of content with the Royal Uncancelled After Show available every weekday with no advertising whatsoever. You can also message me direct on there. That's www.outspoken.live.
Yeah, and you know what really annoyed me about that, Dan, was they sort of made out that they just promised to the Queen not to use it for commercial purposes only. But that statement from the Queen, which was issued after the Sandringham summit, which, you know, your producer would be able to pull up in a flash, I'm sure, like actually says they will not use the HRH titles. There's no equivocation or pretending that it's to do with commercial reasons or non-commercial reasons or private reasons. They were asked and agreed not to use the HRH honorific. It's not actually a title in HRH, is it? It's a style technically, but you know, they were asked not to use it and they just went ahead. She just went ahead and used it. And I think it's just, I don't know, the whole thing is like, I don't know. And then this whole article is all about like how authentic. There we are. You know, they
It was absolutely clear. It was absolutely
yeah,
clear. And I mean,
yeah.
the thing that I think is also so fascinating, Tom, is that, of course, at the same time, we have a very strategic, I don't think it's going to work, but a very strategic bid to try and suggest that everything is completely fine between Harry and Meghan. They're more in love than ever. So we get, just before the release of the Harpers Bazaar cover, the drop of the Netflix trailer, which includes what I believe is a very awkward kiss between Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. He feels deeply uncomfortable in this moment. You know how much he's struggling at the moment, Tom, with the loss of his hair. And I mean, they've done him no favors there because the lighting is right on the crown, which makes his thinning hair look worse than ever, actually. And yet she's still put that out as the image going to the world. Then in the Harper's Bazaar article, Tom, what's really odd, and have you noticed she's done this a lot? She talks about how much he loves her. Nothing about her love for him. So I just want to read you out this passage from the feature where the reporter for Harper's Bazaar writes, her circle of trust is tight. She puts her hand on her heart when she talks about her husband. He loves me so boldly, fully, and he also has a different perspective because he sees media that I wouldn't. No one in the world loves me more than him, so I know he's always going to make sure that he has my back. With Harry, Meghan explains, you have someone who has just this childlike wonder and playfulness. I was so drawn to that, and he brought that out in me. That's translated into every part of our life. Even in business, I want us to play and have fun and explore and be creative. So, Tom, I really do think this is worth breaking down, okay? Because this is very odd, right? She's talking about her husband. Tom, she's not talking about a business partner and an acquaintance. You know, they have actually professionally separated in recent months. So she's talking about her husband here. She doesn't say that she loves him at all. What she says is that she liked what he brought out in her. And there's also a couple of backhanded compliments here. Childlike wonder, she says, playfulness. Well, to me, the translation there is immaturity, actually. Yeah. And then did you see where she said, he also has a different perspective because he sees media that I wouldn't. Now, that is
What
definitely,
does that mean?
well, it's a dig, okay? It is absolutely a dig because you know she tries to claim that she doesn't look at the tabloid media and everything. Now, I don't believe that, but Harry is obsessed with it. He is completely obsessed with it. He has like burner accounts on X where he goes on and he looks at what people are even saying about him on social media. So she is making a dig
This is
at
why
her
you need
husband
Dan
there.
Wootton. I was looking at that line saying he looks at media different, and I could not understand what it meant. But of course, you're absolutely right, Dan. That's exactly what it means. It's a kind of dig at him for reading the tabloids and reading the comments, which we all know that he does. Because do you remember in his famous statement, he complained that the comments underneath some articles had been rude about Meghan many years ago when they first made that statement. And that's a really, really interesting observation. I was looking at that and I was thinking, what a bizarre thing to mention in the context of your relationship with your husband. And as you say, it's an incredibly unusual description of a marital relationship, right? To say he really loves me, not to say we love each other.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. I was really confused about that, what that meant, because he sees media that I wouldn't. But you're absolutely right.
And
Sorry,
also
carry on. I
playfulness
interrupted you.
and childlike nature as well. It just all rings true about the complete lack of an equal balance in this relationship, you see. And I mean, there are times actually where I think in this feature you see the real Meghan, and there's a lot of, I mean, there's a real attempt, I guess, to portray her as someone who is a kind individual, even though that anyone who's reported on her for a long time knows that she's not. So what they've done is gone to some people who are only going to give a positive take on her. So Meghan kicks off by saying, I like the community of work and the connection. I think a lot of it is in my DNA. It's an attitude in contrast with the current trend of valorizing a soft life, that is a life without work outside the home with an emphasis on ease, which requires its own level of hidden labor. You should do what works for you, Meghan says diplomatically. For her, though, when people start to see your work ethic and really understand how dedicated you are to things, how you are in one place, I believe is how you are in other places. So for me, that's how I show up when I do potlucks at my kids' school. That's how I show up when putting a party together for my friend who just had a baby. That's how I show up in my business. Now, again, Tom, that's the real Meghan Markle coming out, right? It's like ruthless ambition, absolute hard work and overachievement in her head in every aspect of her life. And what was clear is that the writer for Harpers Bazaar was trying to draw out a softer side to her. But no, it's like really competitive, right? Like even when I'm at Archie and Lily's school, you know, I show up and I show up and I make sure that I'm bringing, you know, the best spread of crudités. I don't know. To me, that was a really interesting line. And then they bring her friends in, okay? And so there's a bit of a coup here for Harper's Bazaar because Serena Williams has spoken on the record. You know, that's not something that's happened before, Tom. And she says, we love a good mimosa. We could talk for 100 hours and it feels like 10 minutes go by. And it's like, we never stop smiling. Then you've also got her other best friend, what's her name? Zajfin. Yes, who says she's funny. I think maybe that's surprising to people. Williams adds, we both definitely have a dry sense of humor. I think that's why we hit it off for no reason at the silly football thing. We were just like, why are we here to meet you? Apparently, and we've been lifelong friends ever since. And then Meghan says, I don't think things that feel over-realized, if you overwork the dough, it's not going to rise. And sometimes I think the stress that people put on moments, they are so consumed in them that you lose the fun of why you were doing something. Not everyone, and then someone, the producer for Oprah Winfrey comes in, which is very odd.
Yeah.
But again, to me, I thought that was so interesting, Tom, because again, there's a complete disconnect between how Meghan views who Meghan is compared to how everyone else does. Because, Tom, whatever you think of her, no one believes that working with Meghan Markle is fun, right? I mean, look at the litany of bullying allegations, right? On both sides of the Atlantic, you know, from within Kensington Palace, within Buckingham Palace, but also within Archewell. So it's like, and also there's nothing about the way that she talks that suggests that she is fun either. Do you know what I mean? It's like, this is serious. Even the potluck lunch at Archie's school is a serious business where she shows up and proves that she's the best. But first, quick word on something I rely on every single day. Surfshark. In a world where governments, big tech, and opportunist hackers are all vying for your data, keeping your browsing private isn't optional, it's essential. And here in the UK, we've even seen sites and reporting, some of our own, at Outspoken, pushed behind the Online Safety Act. So that's why I use Surfshark VPN. It shields what I do online, helps me steer clear of censorship, and lets me access the content I pay for wherever I am, even when I'm traveling and want to catch up on shows or sport that don't appear in the particular zone. But Surfshark isn't just a VPN. It's a full toolkit for safer browsing. Clean web block ads, trackers, malware, and phishing links so pages load cleaner and faster. It's a beautiful experience, actually. And if your connection ever drops, Kill Switch cuts the internet so your data doesn't leak. And if you need certain apps like online banking to skip the VPN, Bypasser handles that with a couple of clicks. There are 3,200 plus servers in over 100 countries, so you can switch locations in seconds. Great for finding better online deals. I have to be honest with you, I have snagged some cheaper flights thanks to Surfshark. And you can run Surfshark on unlimited devices too, which means your whole household is covered in one plan. If you want to lock down your data, defend your online freedom, and support Outspoken, head to surfshark.com/outspoken or use the code Outspoken at checkout to get an extra 4 months of Surfshark VPN. That's surfshark.com/outspoken or use the code Outspoken for an extra 4 months on us. You can click in the description box below this video too. But now back to the show.
It reminds me, Dan, I had a friend who used his most withering put down that he could have for anybody was, well, he's a jolly nice chap or she's a jolly nice woman or whatever, but I wouldn't want to be a fellow parent in the pony club with her. And I slightly feel about Meghan. You wouldn't want to be a fellow parent at the potluck lunch, would you? I mean, it is weird. Like the whole sort of like, I'm going to be the greatest parent ever. I'm going to be this, I'm going to be that. And the kind of need to sort of tell everybody. And it's really, really, it's actually, the more I look at it, it's actually a really intelligent piece of writing because it's coded. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Oh, it's so
it's
coded.
saying one thing on the surface, but actually when you read it again, it's saying something quite different. And when you read it a third time, you take bits out of it, you can actually see that the writer actually, look, I do think that the best ever piece about Meghan was the New York Magazine piece in The Cut, because I think that she so arrogantly assumed that they were just going to roll over and write exactly what she wanted. And the journalist, whose name escapes me, but the journalist who was brilliant writer, wasn't having any of it, and just told the truth about like how she behaved and how she behaved to other people and her arrogance and all these kinds of things in a very, very frank way. And it was an absolutely devastating portrait of Meghan. I thought that the Vanity Fair piece earlier this year, to me, that was sort of more of a bit of a cheap hit job in a funny kind of way. I thought it felt a bit unworthy of Vanity Fair. It wasn't quite there, I didn't think, in the same way. This piece is really interesting because when you first read it, you think, oh my God, they've just run all this sycophantic stuff about letting the dough rise and turning up and showing up and being authentic. And another really interesting thing that the writer does, did you notice the bit where she talks about her family and her background and her childhood and her mother? And what the writer does, I think, very, very cleverly, is emphasize the mother so much that the absence of the father kind of floats to the surface in a kind of slightly
Oh my God,
mysterious
I
kind of
know.
way.
I just kept thinking that.
I don't think you can read that stuff about the mum without thinking, what about your dad? And for those of us who know the story of Thomas Markle, I know he certainly did not behave, without any fault at all. And he did take, money to pose for pictures, and he probably,
Yeah, as she does.
was foolish,
And as she always has.
And indeed, but at the same time, he wasn't properly supported. And it does appear from every account that I've read that he did try and do a lot for his daughter when she was younger.
Yeah, but I think she was also digging out Doria, to be honest, because Meghan makes it really clear that she's nothing like her own mother. She's nothing like her. And again, that to me was really telling.
Yeah, like all the instant food stuff. I don't think she talked about this time, but in the past, I've really noticed that. All the like, I had to come home and watch telly on my own and put food in the microwave, and I only learnt about cooking from watching TV, has always felt like weirdly double-edged to, Doria, who so often gets all this praise and that kind of stuff.
And
But
also,
I
you
do, the
see.
more I think about it,
Oh, sorry.
sorry.
You make your point, Tom.
No, I just the more on rereading it, there are definite layers
Oh no, there are.
to this piece.
There are, because I wanted to go into a couple of them actually, because it's where the writer gives some colour about the fact that they're meeting at the Polo Lounge, which is this very exclusive, famous, old school Hollywood restaurant at the Beverly Hills Hotel, the Pink Palace. And they've chosen a very specific table there. And this was the choice of Meghan, not the choice of the writer. And she writes, it's a calculated choice as the site for my first interview with Meghan. We are ushered to a circular table in the corner of the garden, a prime seat where we can see the other diners and they can see the three of us. So Meghan wants to be seen. You know, the restaurateur, Michael Chow, comes up to her and they have, you know, a whispered conference. And I thought that was super interesting. The fact that Meghan clearly loves the fact now that she views herself as a Hollywood power player. Actually, most people at the Polo Lounge would ask to be at the most discreet table. Then the writer goes on to say a waiter comes to clear the table, but Meghan asks him to leave the fries behind. I ask her if she ever feels the need to compartmentalize the parts of her life, work and family. And she says, my office is right by the kitchen and I love that I can work from home. It's a great luxury. Her daughter Lilibet comes and sits on my lap when I'm in the middle of the meeting, whether it's about P&L for my brand or it's about something creative. When I ask Meghan what she hopes her kids see when they see her working, she tells me, I hope they see the value of being brave. They saw it when the jam was just a pot on the stove bubbling. When you're young, she adds, I think you're a little bit more fearless. As we get older, we lose some of that. And again, I'm like, the portrait that is being painted here, Tom, is not of a person who is very focused on parenting, as Meghan tries to make out in lots of her public statements. This is an absolute workaholic who's obsessed with status and obsessed with her job. Now, again, that's okay if that's what you are, but I would argue that's certainly not the impression that Meghan tries to give the world.
Don't you? I just if I never hear if I never hear Meghan talking about P&L again in the rest of my life, it'll be too soon. It's the way she sort of, you know, I'm sure, you know, thousands and thousands of people watching this podcast, you yourself, Dan, me, we're all very familiar with the concept of profit and loss. Do you know what I mean? It's not some like Harvard Business School. Oh, I've got to go through the got to go through the P&L, honey. I mean,
and trust
Jesus
me, Meghan,
Christ.
yours ain't
Like,
looking good. Okay, yours ain't looking good. So probably the less you look at it right now, the better.
But like, what do you know what I mean? It's like this sort of faux, fake kind of like, I'm a businesswoman. I'm obsessed by looking at spreadsheets. I can't take my eyes off the P&L. It's like she reminds me of like one of those people who like is telling you about their business and starts producing more and more different colored graphs that show how brilliant they are and how this has happened and that has happened. And you're just like looking at it going, like, you know, like, come on, like this is, I don't know, there's something that sort of faux, I'm, you know, really invested in the business side of my business, which we know, frankly, that Netflix is running the whole commercial side of the, you know, as ever business. For how much longer that will continue, I don't know. But like, it's just sort of, you know, I just find it so weird that she just keeps going on, and I thought it was really interesting. These interviews was probably done 4 months ago or 3 months ago, but I thought it was really interesting how she keeps talking about authenticity. Or I've got to be authentic. I've got to be this. I've got to be that. Because one of the things I've been talking a lot about in the Royalist actually over the past few weeks is how there is this sort of authenticity crisis at the core of Meghan's brand, and whether it's using your jam tongs upside down, or whether it's kind of putting out, you know, the sort of whole conflict between the children being in the business and not in the business, and their faces being blurred, but yet they're still in the photo to still generate interest. And you know, there's this massive kind of crisis at the core of it, which doesn't matter, right? If you just have a normal business selling widgets. It doesn't matter if you're authentic or not. But if you are going to make your if your whole business is predicated on this is not a jam, this is like a little insight into my life, and it's a little piece of my life that I'm going to share with you. You know, it's a very high stakes game because you got to sell your whole image. And when people start to think that, frankly, you're having them on and you're not being straight with them, the trust and the confidence in the brand, like reputation, is won in drops and it is lost in buckets. And the
100%.
moment that you start doing these things, like lifting your jam, like you're claiming you're like the world's most fanatical jam maker, and you don't know how to use a pair of jam tongs. It's like, it's crazy. I'm not saying that I know how to use a pair of jam tongs. I've made jam, right? It's not very difficult. You get a load of fruit, a load of sugar, you boil it all up and you stick it in some jars, right? It's not very difficult. Like people have been making it for like thousands of years, right?
But
It's not
she's
hard. Obviously, they
hitting
haven't been
back,
using sugar.
interestingly, Tom, at people like you who are saying she does have an authenticity issue. She does actually go there in this interview. She says, I love being able to do both, to play in the sandbox with my kids and to play in the front row at a show. I think the moment that you start making all of your personal decisions based on external judgment, then you lose your authenticity. So, I mean, she has gone there in a way.
What's she actually trying to say there? I don't understand. You're going to have to use, sorry, you're going to have to use your brains to decode this for me. What is she trying to say?
Well,
when
it's
you
interesting
start
because
making all of your personal decisions based on
then the
external
writer
judgment?
then starts saying, I mean, well, look, that is just a straight clapback, right, at critics. It's basically saying,
Right.
F off. Do you know what I mean? And I believe, because this is the moment in the interview where she's had to admit, and I think it's mortifying, Tom, because the whole Paris trip was overshadowed by her totally grim decision to post this sort of Princess Diana inspired video going through Paris on a Saturday night. You know, we covered it in depth, obviously, as did you. But it was then so mortifying because she had to admit that, you know, the Balenciaga boss, you know, Piccioli, had actually not invited her. She had invited herself. And she has to confirm that in the interview, saying, I was excited for him. I reached out and I said, happy to come and support you. You kept it a secret. And it was really fun. And so I believe what she's saying here is, you know what, to the critics, F off. But she's not actually quite prepared to go that far. And there is a lot of woke mumbo jumbo and double speak, you know, because the writer says that she launches into a tangent about culture's deep and historical distrust of women's voices in public.
Yeah.
And she asks Meghan, she says, you know what I mean? And Meghan deadpans saying, well, yeah. So she's just clearly not prepared to go there. And so the writer says, I tell her it sounds like she has good boundaries. And Meghan replies, I think my boundaries became stronger once I came into the public eye in this very... She pauses and makes a face similar to the one she made when talking about making mistakes, and laughs. I could think of any adjective to fill the blank and it would probably work. You find different ways to protect yourself, whether that's self-preservation or it's just growing up. So, I mean, what does that mean? I mean, it is totally meaningless. It is complete mumbo jumbo. I guess it is a small acknowledgement that she has made mistakes, but, you know, a very, very small one.
But it's that sort of faux, you know, do you remember when there was like this wave of about 2-3 years ago, there was this wave of like, the most important thing you can do is fail. Do you remember all the books about how amazing failure was? And, you know, it became like the ultimate humble brag, didn't it? Like, I failed so badly with my first business, and then I started the multi-billion-dollar one, you know. And it's sort of weirdly like that. It's like I have only made these mistakes because I have been so brave.
But
and
I think she has no humility, Tom. I mean, think of the number of things she could be humble about. Do you know what I mean? I genuinely read this whole thing and I was thinking, is there going to be any sort of acknowledgement here? And there wasn't. There wasn't. You know, no acknowledgement of what a complete career crisis this has been, going from one disaster to another over the past year. None of it. Tom, I've got to talk to you about the timing as well. And I do also want to speak about William and Catherine, because this is the problem, Tom. They knew. You know, come on, when they met with Charles, you know, all of the briefing, or when Harry met with Charles, sorry, all of the briefing was that, we're going to stop these diary clashes. Now, she did not have to get Harpers Bazaar and Netflix to release literally at the same time as Catherine and William turned up to the Royal Albert Hall doing their duty at the Royal Variety performance. It's not very often of late that we have seen them together at a black tie event. And it didn't work in the UK, interestingly, Tom, because if you look at these front pages, the Daily Express, the Times, and the Sun all used on their front page pictures of Catherine rather than the cover shoot of Meghan, which is a devastating blow for her because remember last week it did work when she, or maybe it was a fortnight ago, do you remember when she went on set and leaked to the Sun the fact that she was returning to acting and it pushed William off the front pages? But in this case, it didn't work because I think what we have seen from William and Catherine at the Royal Albert Hall really was them at their best. And actually, Tom, just before I get you to come in, I want to show you this lovely moment, which is going viral at the moment, of William and Catherine meeting these two adorable twin girls at the Albert Hall.
You didn't, did you? Oh, are you excited to tell your friends?
Yeah.
Are you going to watch something?
Yeah.
Are you fans of Harper?
Yeah, sort of.
Little bit. My kid is very sad. We're going to have to keep it a big secret. But I saw you guys because I said, I don't think any children could go because they were very sad. Did these for me? Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You too. You're very smiley.
Connections. Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Okay.
Tom, it was just one of those great moments. And there were so many of them last night. And in some ways, it is such a shame that Meghan is up to her usual tricks. And I don't believe it was a coincidence. Do you?
I don't know if they have a great deal of control over Netflix, to be really honest, but they certainly have a great deal of control over when Harper's Bazaar would have put that out. I think Netflix, you could argue that Netflix do what Netflix want and that they hold the whip hand in that relationship. But I felt that to release that on Harper's channels, on her own channels, literally as Catherine and William were going to the Royal Variety performance, I thought it was just really, it leaves a nasty taste, doesn't it? Especially if you're making this claim that you're trying to coordinate. But, we know that's nonsense because the palace have denied that they did coordinate, that Harry's thing was coordinated. So I think that it's pretty clear that the Sussexes want to continue this fight. But, I mean, they're going to lose.
Oh, they are. Oh, they are. That's the thing. It's like they may have won this PR battle, but my God, they are losing the war. And I think actually, if Meghan had any sense, she would realize that this Harper's Bazaar cover has not been the victory that she thinks it is. But obviously, Tom, this feeds into a much wider discussion that I want to have now in terms of what's really happening within the British royal family. We are seeing a swift transition, and it's something that the mainstream media are not reporting on, but you are. So what we're going to do is move over to Substack now for our Royal Uncancelled after show. You can sign up at www.outspoken.live. That is where you get first access to all of our royal content every single weekday, twice the length of what you've just seen, with no advertising whatsoever. And Substack is such a great platform. Of course, Tom is on it with The Royalist, which I very much recommend. I'm on it with Outspoken, and it is a free speech platform which protects us from big tech cancellation and lawfare, which is one of the reasons that I think it's really, really important. So find us over there, www.outspoken.live. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.